With the Tarbosaurus vs Polacanthus fight finally released, we are inching closer to the end of round 2 in DBWC Season 2. The next matchup will follow Acrocanthosaurus and Shunosaurus, and looking at the voting poll right now, Acrocanthosaurus is winning this fight. After that, the final matchup will be between Ceratosaurus and Diceratops. This fight has a community split on who should win, from what I can tell. I am aware that there are voting polls that show more people voting for Ceratosaurus than Diceratops, but they aren't the most reliable since they vary from 100 to 1000 or more votes, while official voting polls have 6000 to 10,000 or more votes. Some want Ceratosaurus to win to have an even ratio between herbivores and carnivores in the quarterfinals, while others want Diceratops to win because they believe he performed better in his respective fight than Ceratosaurus, meaning he should advance to the next round. However, these shouldn't be definitive factors to determine who should win. It's unfair to have Ceratosaurus win just for the sake of having an equal ratio of herbivores and carnivores, and it isn't right to say Diceratops is a better fighter since Ceratosaurus does have untapped potential. Instead, we should look at the benefits and drawbacks of either one of them winning, because in my opinion, both are great fighters and this would be a more fair way of thinking who should win. I will be going over a pro and con list for both of them. Some of the points I'll go over are ones I thought of, while others are from comments I saw in unofficial voting polls or DBWC videos. I will also be inputting my opinion on each point since there are some with reasonings that I agree with while others I don't. What I say is based on my opinion, so feel free to disagree with what I say. With that said, let's get on with the video. Ceratosaurus made his official debut in round 1 in Group C3 on February 10, 2022, where he fought and won against Kentrosaurus. He is one of the most underappreciated carnivores in this tournament since not many people pay much attention to him or consider him a contender for the title of champion for Season 2. However, that could change in this round when he fights Diceratops. He has shown some level of intelligence and has untapped potential, and that's one of the reasons why I will be okay with him winning over Diceratops, even though I like Diceratops slightly more. I do think Ceratosaurus deserves more love since he's overshadowed by the other 3 carnivores. If you plan on voting for Ceratosaurus, let me go over the pros of him advancing further. The first and most common reason people want Ceratosaurus to win is so there are an equal number of herbivores and carnivores in the quarterfinals. We already have 4 herbivores and the community wants to balance that out with 4 carnivores, so Ceratosaurus winning in this matchup is the ideal choice for the majority since we only have 3 confirmed carnivores in the next round. While I am okay with this, I don't like the reasoning behind why Ceratosaurus should win. By allowing a certain number of herbivores or carnivores to advance, we're essentially ruining some dinosaurs' chances at winning. Polacanthus and Shunosaurus' biggest reasons for why they lost was because people didn't want any more herbivores to advance and preferred to have the remaining victors go to the carnivores. And to be fair, Siamosaurus was the only carnivore to advance, so I can understand their perspective on this. But we have 3 now, and to say Ceratosaurus should still move on to balance that out, I don't know. That to me doesn't seem fair. Every one of them should have an equal chance at winning, regardless if there are more herbivores or carnivores in the next round. The second reason people want Ceratosaurus to win is so there could be a more diverse cast of dinosaurs in the quarterfinals. We already have Titanoceratops, a Ceratopsian, in the quarterfinals. If Diceratops wins, we'll have 2 Ceratopsians. Because of that, having Ceratosaurus win will make the roster more diverse. I don't take too much issue with 2 Ceratopsians in the quarterfinals. However, we already had something like that in the first season with Pentaceratops and Triceratops. I think the DBWC community is justified here in wanting to have a more diverse cast than another Ceratopsian advancing. However, I hope this only applies to Ceratopsians and none of the other groups of dinosaurs. I like having some diversity, but it would be cool for 2 Ankylosaurids, Sauropods, Spinosaurus, or any other group of dinosaurs to advance in future tournaments if we get more, especially if they go against each other. Going back to Ceratosaurus, one thing I don't see anyone bring up is how they have the potential to be worthy of the champion title in Season 2. I know people have their eyes on Tarbosaurus or an Acrocanthosaurus Acrocanthosaurus being champions for the carnivore side, and sometimes Siamosaurus, but never Ceratosaurus. I think 10 people at max want to see him win, and it's rather unfortunate since from what we've seen, Ceratosaurus does present some level of skill that makes him a good fighter. The most impressive thing he did in round 1 was how he managed to land precisely on Kentrosaurus' shoulder spikes and proceeded to break them off with ease. Granted, they were thin, so maybe it wasn't that impressive, but at the same time, he landed on them without breaking them off first. Add to the fact the landing wasn't exactly light since it forced Kentro to collapse to the ground. Either Kentrosaurus' shoulder spikes aren't as fragile as they appear, or Ceratosaurus prevented himself from breaking them off as he landed before he broke them off. Either way, it makes Ceratosaurus look better. Who knows, maybe he has the necessary skills to surpass Tarbo and Acro and be champion of Season 2 instead. I would still much prefer a herbivore to win this season, but if it had to come down to a carnivore, Ceratosaurus could live up to that title. Speaking of herbivores, Ceratosaurus will fight against Gigant Spinosaurus in the quarterfinals if he defeats Diceratops, and that matchup sounds amazing thematically speaking. Both of them are underappreciated or go unnoticed by the DBWC community. Ceratosaurus is the underdog of carnivores, while Gigant Spinosaurus is the underdog of the herbivores. Neither of them is as popular as Tarbosaurus, Brachiosaurus, or Acrocanthosaurus. Yes, Ceratosaurus is predicted to make it to the semifinals, but is also expected to lose to Brachiosaurus or Tarbosaurus because they're more popular than him. More on that later. Basically, these two have similar backgrounds. The funny thing is, almost every group has at least one dinosaur that the community wants to win the tournament, except for Group D. To me, that adds a lot more weight to this fight, and whoever wins may get a boost in popularity based on their performance, giving them a better chance at winning the next round, or the entire tournament. Their past opponents will also provide them with the experience to one-up each other for this potential fight. Everything I'm talking about here could make up for possibly one of the most epic fights in this season, and I for one hope others would think the same way. And those are all the positives of Ceratosaurus winning this matchup. It's not a whole lot, but it's the weight of the pros that matter more than the quantity of pros. With those out of the way, let's get to the cons. The first problematic issue with Ceratosaurus moving on to the next round is how the next fight between him and Gigant Spinosaurus will be similar to his round 1 fight against Kentrosaurus. I find this the least problematic reason for why Ceratosaurus shouldn't advance, because the argument here is that this matchup will be a copy and paste fight from round 1 and that having similar matchups to past ones is boring. However, Gigant Spinosaurus has enough of a different fighting style from Kentro to make this fight different enough from the first round, and if we're going by the logic that similar fights are a terrible thing, if Diceratops wins, we'll have a Ceratopsian versus Stegosaur fight, which is one we've seen several times, which means Diceratops winning would be worse. No matter who wins, we will have a matchup that's already been done before. So saying Ceratosaurus should not win because it will lead to a similar previous fight does not make sense when Diceratops will also lead to a similar matchup. The next point is what I see as a con of mine, and that's the risk of having 3 carnivores in the semifinals again. I see a handful of people wanting to see 3 carnivores and 1 herbivore in the semifinals again because they're nostalgic for Season 1 and want Season 2 to follow the same formula. I, for one, don't like the idea. Herbivores have been undermined so much in the past, and the fact that they're getting the respect they deserve now is a nice change of pace. Plus, I want to see a herbivore win this season, along with many others, so to say that only 1 herbivore should be in the semifinals again bothers me a lot. It didn't seem likely as much before, but with many people rooting for Siamosaurus to win after Diceratosaurus lost his one set of claws, that possibility seems closer to reality. I know Brachio is the most popular herbivore here and that they have the highest chance at winning the tournament, which means I shouldn't be upset because a herbivore is winning the tournament regardless. But come on, should he really be the only herbivore in the semifinals? Brachio isn't the only good herbivore here. If Diceratosaurus does fail, Gigant could very well be the second herbivore that makes it to the semifinals, and that will make the semifinals have an equal ratio of herbivores and carnivores. However, Cera will probably still be the preferred choice since that's the predicted outcome of this matchup. Additionally, some people hate that Gigant won over Siamotyrannus and even regret voting for him, so it wouldn't be surprising if they voted Ceratosaurus over Gigant Spinosaurus to avenge Siamotyrannus. All this makes Gigant's victory seem less likely. With that in mind, it makes the possibility of Brachiosaurus being the only herbivore in the semifinals more likely. Then there's the worst case scenario, the semifinals only consisting of carnivores. Okay, maybe not the worst case scenario, but if we lose every herbivore after everything they've shown to be capable of, it would be disappointing. This whole thing is just another what if situation, but this is a possibility I see happening with many people being blinded by nostalgia for the first season of DBWC and believing that season 2 should play out like season 1. I want to be hopeful and say that this won't happen, especially since Gigantospinosaurus and Titanoceratops won the majority vote over Siamotyrannus and Allosaurus. I can't be sure. This didn't have much to do with Ceratosaurus, but he is a key part of how the rest of the tournament will play out. Plus, I wanted to get this off my chest. The final and biggest con to Ceratosaurus winning is that in the long run, he will lose in the semifinals no matter what. In almost every prediction video, Ceratosaurus makes it up to the semifinals and loses to either Tarbosaurus or Brachiosaurus. You would think that he will at the very least have a chance at making it to the finals by the many people who want him in the semifinals, but no, his run ends in the semifinals. That's his destiny. There's a chance that Cerato could gain more popularity after this fight with Diceratops and boost his chances to make it to the finals. Still, they would need to do something to wow everyone. Unfortunately, that's how picking the winner works. If you're not popular, you can forget about ever winning. As of writing this, Ceratosaurus is nowhere near as popular as Brachio or Tarbo and stands no chance of beating them in popularity. No one's going to vote for him over those two, which begs the question, why do so many people want Ceratosaurus to win up until the semifinals? Reading the comments and watching these predictions showed me how Ceratosaurus is perceived. A variable. People want him to win against Diceratops because they want an equal number of carnivores and herbivores. People want him to win against Gigantospinosaurus because they hate him for killing Siamotyrannus. Some people want Ceratosaurus in the semifinals to fight Tarbosaurus so they could have a carnivore on carnivore fight. He's just a variable for what the people want. It's kinda sad. If Ceratosaurus is destined to lose in the semifinals, then I think it would be best if he lost in the quarterfinals to Gigantospinosaurus. It would not only be a fitting end since his first opponent was a Stegosaur, but it will also give Gigant more time to shine and possibly make it to the finals unlike Ceratosaurus. Yeah, that chance is still low, but it's higher than Ceratosaurus, and I see Gigant providing a fun and entertaining fight for both Brachio and Tarbo. It will also give us a never-before-seen matchup between a Stegosaur and a Ceratopod. What I'm trying to say is, there are more positives with Gigant in the semifinals than with Ceratosaurus. I don't think it's much of a stretch to say this, but if Ceratosaurus makes it to the semifinals, he will be the longest surviving fodder dinosaur in DBWC. Diceratops. He's probably my favorite Ceratopsian design-wise. He debuted on May 29, 2022 when he faced off against two Raptor X and became a fan favorite among the DBWC community. He looks like the angriest member of the Ceratopsian family, and as for shown when he acts like a raging bull throughout his fight against the Raptor X. I like that a lot. Did you know Diceratops is a former genus name? AKA, that's not what he's officially called now. In 2007, they changed the name from Diceratops to Nidoceratops because there's a parasitic wasp with the name Diceratops, which is now renamed Cysutus. I don't know if I pronounced that wrong, let me know in the comments. So, I guess we could still call Nidoceratops Diceratops? I don't know. Even though I like the guy, I won't be completely biased toward him. I'm going to be fair here. First and foremost, let's go over the pros. If Diceratops were to win in the next round, he would face against Gigantospinosaurus. I already went over how people don't like the same matchup of dinosaurs, and this is especially the case here since we already had 3 Stegosaur versus Ceratopsian fights in total, and this could be the 4th. And because of that, people want to prevent this matchup from happening. I understand where they're coming from. I'm someone who doesn't want to see the finale between Siamatosaurus and Tarbosaurus. However, I would not mind a matchup between Diceratops and Gigantospinosaurus. Let me explain. In Season 1, every Stegosaur versus Ceratopsian battle resulted in a Stegosaur losing. In Season 2, only one Stegosaur emerged victorious in the first round, and that was Gigantospinosaurus, who is currently in the quarterfinals. This is the first time a Stegosaur made it past round 1 and won against 2 carnivores, which is a small feat but a big dub for the Stegosaur family. Now, what if they face the Ceratopsian, the very group that killed every Stegosaur in Season 1? Would Gigant win and break the losing streak between Stegosaurs and Ceratopsians, or will he tragically fall to Diceratops, continuing the losing streak? I know seeing the same matchup with the same group of dinosaurs is not desirable. However, the theming here and the potential more than justify it to happen, unlike some other matchups. Ceratosaurus versus dinosaurs. On the topic of potential, if Diceratops were to beat Gigantospinosaurus, there's a chance he could face Brachiosaurus. We've never seen a matchup between a Ceratopsian and a Ceratopod in DBWC ever. I saw some people upset the fact that Shunnosaurus lost, not just because they thought he was a better fighter, but also because they wanted to see a fight between a Ceratopod and a Ceratopsian, which won't happen unfortunately. But we have another chance to make that happen with Diceratops and Brachiosaurus. Unlike Shunnosaurus versus Titanoceratops, Brachiosaurus versus Diceratops could be more intense since it takes place in the semifinals, where the battles are usually the best. Diceratops would need a partner to help him out since he wouldn't stand much of a chance alone against Brachiosaurus, who already had to deal with a trio of Dracorex. This is assuming Brachio wins against Tarbo, because if Tarbo wins, then it would be better if Diceratops were to lose. I'll get to the why in the con list, and if Diceratops does lose, we still technically have a chance with Titanoceratops also potentially fighting Brachiosaurus. But are you really going to tell me that we could get that fight when he's facing aggro of all dinosaurs, one that fans hype up a lot? Unlikely. That's why it would be better for Diceratops to make this matchup possible. I can make a case for why Titanoceratops should win over Acrocanthosaurus, but that isn't the main focus of this video. Moving on to the last thing on the list, if Diceratops faces against Gigantospinosaurus in the quarterfinals, a herbivore is guaranteed to be in the semifinals. I said in Ceratosaurus con list that if they won, there's the risk of only one herbivore, Brachiosaurus, in the semifinals or an all-carnivore final, which I didn't like. But if Diceratops advances to the next round, no matter what, a herbivore is ensured to be in the semifinals. In addition, we'll see a new matchup between a Ceratopod against a Ceratopsian or a Stegosaur. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That can't happen. That will be more herbivores than carnivores, and that's unfair. We must have some semblance of balance. However, I already explained how Brachiosaurus might be the only herbivore in the semifinals, which I don't see anyone taking much of an issue with currently, and I find that unfair. Yes, Therizinosaurus could very well win against Siamosaurus and make it to the semifinals, but the odds are not in his favor. We already have 3 carnivores in the quarterfinals, and each one will appear in 3 out of the 4 fights in the quarterfinals. One more herbivore isn't going to hurt anyone, especially if it means we get a guaranteed one in the semifinals, if the carnivores win every fight in the quarterfinals for some reason. And that's it for the pros list. It's time for the cons. Just a heads up, I will go over some of these cons listed here that I see people commonly bring up and try to explain how they aren't good or valid arguments. This may seem biased, but I find most of them irrational or not as much of an issue as they're made out to be. Alright, let's get this over with. One of the most common reasons I see why Diceratops can't win is that if he wins, there will be more herbivores than carnivores in the quarterfinals. Most of the community, even some well-known dino tubers, want a balanced ratio of herbivores and carnivores throughout the rest of the tournament. I get it. A 4-to-4 ratio between carnivores and herbivores sounds fair, perfectly balanced as they say. But would one herbivore really hurt? It's not like Diceratops' mere presence would ruin the entire tournament. I find it crazy how more people don't like the idea of 3 herbivores being in the semifinals, but are okay with 3 carnivores in the semifinals. I know not everyone is on board with this idea, but I know a good handful of them are. It's okay if you don't like having more herbivores than carnivores, but to present this as the smoking gun and say that this should be the absolute reason why Diceratops shouldn't win is silly. One thing to point out that I don't see many people mentioning is that there's a possibility Diceratops could perform worse than the previous round. If you think about it, some dinosaurs who previously did decent or not so well in the first round did amazingly in the second round, and those who did well in their previous rounds performed a little worse than before. And I see this possibility being more likely to happen to Diceratops because more often than not, they got themselves in vulnerable situations mainly because of the fact they charged recklessly to his opponents with no real thought or strategy like some other dinosaurs. I know Diceratops fans clown on Ceratosaurus for being weak even though he really isn't, but Diceratops' recklessness cost him an eye and some damage to his back. He does have some level of skill, but Ceratosaurus has more untapped potential, and if it turns out he had a lot more going on for him than Diceratops did, only to lose because of the votes, people will be upset. But that's all a what if scenario. The other most common argument I see against Diceratops is how we'll have another Stegosaur versus Ceratopsian matchup if he wins. According to the people who make this argument, they just find repeated matchups to be boring and not fun. However, I already explained why this Stegosaur versus Ceratopsian matchup could be fun to watch and how sometimes it's okay to have similar matchups under certain circumstances, which is why I find this reason to be weak. I've seen this argument for so many other dinosaurs that's just kinda annoying and inconsistent with what the community wants. There were other opportunities where we could have seen a new matchup had we voted differently, and that's just focusing on the potential matchups in the quarterfinals. Look, it's alright if you don't like seeing the same type of matchups, but please stop using this argument against Diceratops when the next round has 3 matchups we already seen. Another issue brought up often is that if Diceratops wins, there will be 2 Ceratopsians in the quarterfinals. I already explained this in Ceratosaurus section, so I'll just briefly go over it. We already had 2 Ceratopsians in season 1, which was Pentaceratops and Triceratops, and people don't want to have something like that happen again for season 2, because again, people want things to be unique and different. While I don't have much of an issue with this, I can understand why people wouldn't want this to happen again, especially since having a more diverse roster sounds more appealing. There's nothing else to discuss that I haven't already said in Sarah's pro list, so let's move on. After everything I listed above, I still believe Diceratops should move on. I was still rooting for him. I was gonna vote for Diceratops no matter what. Then, after reading a few comments, something I didn't even consider was brought to my attention. In case you couldn't tell, I am against having Siamosaurus and Tarbosaurus fighting in the finals because people really only want it for nostalgia's sake and nothing more. Well, if we take a look at the potential semi-finalists, it starts to line up similarly to season 1. Take a look. Siamosaurus has Spinosaurus, Tarbosaurus has the T-Rex, Acrocanthosaurus has Giganotosaurus, and Diceratops as Triceratops. What I'm getting at with this is that I don't want season 2 semifinals to be season 1 semifinals in a different color. It's one thing to have Tarbosaurus and Siamosaurus fight in the finals just for Tarbo to win like the T-Rex, but it's another when you want the rest of the tournament to play out exactly the same as before. But wait, didn't you say you didn't mind having repeated matchups? Yes, I did say that, but under certain conditions. As long as the match has a fun theme or the fighters have a different fighting style that separates them from the dinosaurs that are being compared to, I wouldn't mind it. With all that said, I don't want the rest of the tournament to be a rehash of season 1. We were given the power to choose which of the 32 dinosaurs should become the dinosaur king while having control over who should fight who. So, why do we want things to play out almost exactly the same? Do some of you not like change or anything new? Siamosaurus, Tarbosaurus, and Acrocanthosaurus are 3 out of the 4 pieces needed for the semifinals to be the same as season 1's, and Diceratops is the final piece. Of course, that would mean all 4 of them would have to win the majority vote in each of their respective fights. And as of right now, Acrocanthosaurus is almost essentially guaranteed a spot for the semifinals. Tarbosaurus is still not well liked by a good majority who much prefer Brachiosaurus. Siamosaurus looks like they could win against their Ceratosaurus because of their popularity plummeting a bit, but not so much where it's all over for him. And if Diceratops does advance, he'll be facing Spinosaurus. And looking over some of the predictions on who will win, Diceratops is thought to be the victor of this fight, so he'll likely make it to the semis with Acrocanthosaurus too. So only 2 out of the 4 have a high likelihood of making it to the semifinals. So why do I bring this up? It sounds like the semifinals won't be a rehash of season 1's. It doesn't sound like something I should be worried about. And you would be right, I'm probably being paranoid. However, what if Tarbosaurus' chances of winning increases if Siamosaurus wins? Think about it. Some are already trying to get this matchup to happen, and if Siamosaurus wins against their Ceratosaurus, people will be more incentivized to get Tarbo to win. Look, Siamosaurus has won. It only makes sense for Tarbo to win so they can fight each other in the final like the T-Rex and Spinosaurus. Tarbosaurus wouldn't be guaranteed to win if Siamosaurus does, but there's a high possibility that more people will vote for him afterward. I can't prove it, but I just feel like it. If Tarbosaurus wins, I feel like everything else will fall into place, with Acrocanthosaurus Diceratops winning. Everything could play out like season 1. In my eyes, this is the worst case scenario for season 2. I will admit that this stems more from Siamosaurus than Diceratops, but Diceratops is the final piece to make the rest of the tournament play out like season 1. If either Spinosaurus or Ceratosaurus makes it to the semifinals instead, then at the very least the semifinals wouldn't be an exact replication of season 1. That's the last thing I want. Could I just be overthinking this? I mean, yeah, maybe I am. You could argue that even if Simonsaurus and Tarbosaurus do make it to the semifinals, Titanoceratops and Gigantospinosaurus could move on instead to make things equal because, again, a majority of people prefer an even ratio between herbivores and carnivores. After all, they did win against Alamosaurus and Simultyrannus for the majority vote, but I wanted to express my concerns anyway. You never know who the community plans to vote for. That's also one of the reasons why I decided to make this video in the first place, to show the pros and cons of who wins and see what people will decide afterwards when they see everything I listed. But yeah, no, I want to hope that this doesn't happen for season 2. I want to hope that the people won't make this happen. But again, I can only wait and see what the future holds. And that is the end of our list for these two. If you made it to the end, thank you for sticking around and hearing me out. Hopefully this video gave you more insight into some matters and maybe helped you come to a conclusion on who to vote for. I'm glad I could get all this out for the public eye through this video instead of a singular comment thread that no one would care to read. I still have more things I want to go over, and I will in the future. I'm looking forward to sharing them on this channel with the community. I don't know who I'm voting for, but honestly, I'll be alright with the results for the most part. Besides, I'm still rooting for another dinosaur to win the tournament. So tell me, did this video change your mind on who to vote for or make you feel better about your choice? Is there something I said that you agreed or disagreed with? Did the video change how you decide who to vote for in future fights? And more importantly, did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments below. With all that said, thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.